a bit late for us today, and people also who got out of bed very early to be with us today. So a big thank you in particular for colleagues in the Asia Pacific region and the Americas for accommodating the trickiness of the time zones. So my name is Agnes Salostri. I'm the Biodiversity Director at IDRI. It's the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations. We're a think tank based in Paris, and we are super pleased to partner with PBL, the Dutch Environmental Assessment Agency today, which is a research institution and with whom we've been working over the past years to support the delivery of international agreements, and especially the biodiversity commitments taken through the global framework for biodiversity. And since COP16, we've been particularly interested in the transparency and review mechanisms to support the implementation of the global biodiversity framework. At Rome in February, important milestones were agreed to unfold this global review that will culminate at COP17 under Armenian presidency that will take place late 2026. And even though the COP has set up the steps for the process, there is still much to flesh in about really what the global review will contain, what it will address in order to make it as useful as possible for the community. So this webinar is really an opportunity to collectively reflect on what the global review can do to better support implementation of biodiversity, the biodiversity agenda. I want to let you know that you can get translation through the subtitle function in Zoom. So you can go in subtitle translation and then activate the language that you want to support interpretation. Also note that this webinar is recorded. It will be made available on YouTube and as well for registered participants. We will share a summary in writing of the key points of the discussion. So just going quickly through the agenda, we will first have introductory remarks from the upcoming Armenian presidency, and I thank very much Deputy Minister Aram Meimarian from the Ministry of Environment of the Republic of Armenia, who will deliver these remarks. Then we will have a very brief question and answer session. So we'll take a couple of questions directly relevant for Mr. Meimarian after his remarks. So please use as participant the question and answer button, the tab, to raise your questions, and with the help of my fellow facilitators, we'll address some of these questions. Then we'll enter the technical overview of the different points we want to tackle today in the webinar. So we'll have Gillian Campbell, the Head of Monitoring, Review and Reporting at the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity, who will go through what was agreed in Rome, what is in the decision, and what the Secretariat has been putting in place to support the unfolding of this process of the global review, followed by my fellow colleague, Juliette Landry, who is Senior Research Fellow here at IDRI, and who has been working with Marcel Koch, the Program Lead on Global Sustainability at PBL, on how this global review should be structured to make a significant change in biodiversity governance and the implementation of the global biodiversity framework. This will be followed by a roundtable discussion with great panelists, Jean-Bruno Mikisa, Substat Chair from Gabon, Eduardo Rubelo Gonzalez from Mexico, who is the Director of Synergies for International Affairs and Commitments at the National Commission of Protected Natural Areas in Mexico, and Joji Carino, who is Forest Peoples Program Senior Policy Advisor, to also give a perspective of indigenous peoples and local communities. So throughout this agenda, please, again, feel free to engage with the question and answer session while you have topics you want to raise, because the second part of the webinar will be dedicated to discussing with you between the panelists and the questions you will have shared through the question and answer tab. So thank you again for joining us, and I will now give the floor to Deputy Minister Meimarian. Deputy Minister, it's our pleasure to host you today, and we're very keen to hear your vision regarding the global review for COP17. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's my great honor and pleasure to participate in this webinar. And firstly, I would like to thank the PBL Netherlands Environment Assessment Agency and the IDRI for organizing this webinar on the Global Biodiversity Review, which is intended to be the launch of series of multi-stakeholder dialogues and events for preparation of a policy brief on the global review of the Global Biodiversity Framework in run-up to COP17 in Armenia. So I greet you, everyone. We would be very happy to see you in Armenia. Before that, we have a very important task to do. As the incoming presidency of Biodiversity COP17, Armenia highly values such initiatives, which will provide important policy recommendations for enhancing the effectiveness of the global review and, most importantly, guiding our efforts towards putting in place meaningful follow-up actions through various COP decisions and initiatives. Producing a practical and action-oriented global review is crucial for the effective and adaptive implementation of the Convention's goals and the achievement of the objectives of Memorial Global Biodiversity Framework. Producing a practical and action-oriented global review is crucial for the effective and adaptive implementation. COP17 in Armenia will be a key milestone in assessing our individual and collective efforts and achievements towards the implementation of the framework. Necessary mechanisms for the course correction, if any, to take sure that the global biodiversity vision by 2050 remains within reach. This crucial task will be critical not only for the perspective of reporting and ensuring transparency by parties and stakeholders on implementation of their commitments, including the provision of means of implementation, but also will help us as a community of CBD parties to collectively assess whether we are on track in implementing the GBF and, if necessary, identify measures to accelerate the implementation efforts. To answer this question, we will require that parties and stakeholders, including us, present their revised NBSAPs as soon as possible and present their national reports by February 2026 to allow the Secretariat, the subsidiary bodies, and other relevant entities to conduct a global review and assessment and present the final report to COP17. Based on the results of the review and the final report, it would then be possible to identify the respective decisions that need to be taken at COP17 for the enhanced action and effective implementation of GBF, as well as for identifying the initial steps for post-2030. Armenia has been steadfast in developing of its national biodiversity strategy and action plan, and we are in the middle of this tough process in an inclusive and whole of government and whole of society manner. Soon we will present an ambitious MBSAP, hopefully, and report back on its implementation by February 26. Just a few days ago in Dilijan, on the most beautiful and biodiverse corners of Armenia, we have organized a 3-day multi-stakeholder consultations on the draft NBSAP, which has been presented for the consideration of all government agencies and civil society. This is a discussion period. After that, it will be circulated through the other ministries, and after that, the governmental decree will be adopted. Based on the results of the consultations and the governmental decree, we hope that we will be able to present to the Secretariat and parties an ambitious but at the same time implementable NBSA to lead by example as COP17 presidency. We know for our own experience that it is not an easy task. Therefore, I would like this opportunity to call upon all parties and stakeholders to make sure that they meet these requirements within the timelines specified by the Secretariat, as our collective progress in COP17 and the implementation of the key objectives of the Convention and its protocols and the GBF, including the issue of resource mobilization and means of implementation, will be highly dependent on the results of the global review. A key outcome of today's discussion for us would be a clearer understanding of the role we can play as the future COP presidency in addressing these challenges. We are keen to hear the views of member states and other stakeholders on their expectations from the chairmanship in preparations for COP17. If the upcoming series of consultations and events help incorporate answers to these questions in the form of a policy brief, it would represent a significant contribution from IDRI and a meaningful input into the upcoming SBI and Substam meetings. Lastly, in terms of coordination and engagement, with other initiatives, we believe it is essential to focus not only on deliverable platforms, but also on capacity building efforts, especially those conducted at the regional level. Many issues raised in regional discussions only reach the global agenda during SBI and SABSTA meetings, and we must ensure that they are addressed earlier and more systematically. In conclusion, I would like to once again thank the PBL and IDRI for organizing this kickoff briefing on the global review and wish you success in your further steps towards re- the preparation of a policy brief on the global review, which will be looking to contribute into take into consideration in our substantive preparations toward COP17. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Myron, for these insights. And we heard your call to provide you with also some ideas and thoughts on how to support this global review. So that's really what this webinar is for. It's also to really start a roundtable with as many different types of stakeholder and policymakers, party representatives as we can to feed us in collectively. Maybe before moving to the next session, if I could have a follow-up question for you, for example. So what do you see, what would you need for all this work that will be conducted to be translated into something that will be a high-level decision at the COP? What type of material, what needs to happen, do you think, for this high-level decision to be made at COP17?
I think for our Armenia as the incoming COP presidency, we will all the time continue to engage with parties and stakeholders in order to be as a bridge for the parties and to shape the agenda, ensure a strong momentum and consensus. From the countries, we expect that for the countries to submit their revised MBSAPs and implementation reports by February, enabling the Secretariat and other relevant bodies to assess progress. And the other thing that the process will involve a series of multi-stakeholder dialogues and consultations, and then as I've already mentioned, that it is very important that regional discussions will take place, and many things will be discussed there. So during the SBI and Substam meetings, consensus will be in place, and then during the COP, we will have step forward on this.
Great, thank you so much. And maybe a last question for you. So regarding the global report, what are your expectations? What would you like this report to bring you as presidency?
So the outcomes of the global review will shape the decisions at COP17. This is very important in case of continuation of our global framework and the consensus that we are expecting to have in the COP will shape the decisions for the other matters also, I think.
Thank you so much for these views, and I think it's a really good basis to build on for the rest of this webinar, and I think also during the panel discussion that we will have right after, we will get back to these issues, of content and how it relates to different steps, such as the dialogues and ultimately COP17 work. Thank you again very much, Minister Marian, and now we will go to the next session. I will invite Gillian Campbell from the CBD Secretariat to deliver her presentation and give us a heads up of where we are at in terms of paving the way for the global review to unfold. Gillian, this is your turn, and I see your...
Thank you, and good morning or good time in the day to everyone. Is this actually in...
We can see your slides, not full screen yet.
Are they full screen now?
No, it's good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for inviting me. I'm going to give an overview of what is the Global Review based on the various COP decisions that have established what the Global Review is. So there's a number of decisions that are relevant to the Global Review. Primarily, there was a decision at COP15, decision 15.6, which includes the decision to have a global review at COP17 and at COP19. There was also a decision on the monitoring framework, which has the indicators which are referenced in the decision 15.6. So the procedures of the global review were then adopted at COP16. So what happened at COP15 was that the COP decided to do the review, and then at COP16 they decided how to do the review, and that is in decision 1632. In decision 1632, there's also the final national reporting template for the 7th national report, which is a primary source of information for the global review. And there's a template for actors other than national governments to make commitments. So in decision 1632, the global review is defined. And so the global review is what will actually happen at COP17, and it will culminate in a COP decision. And it will be informed by the national reports and a global report on collective progress in the implementation of the framework. And so the way that COP has defined it is that the review happens at COP, and it's informed by this global report, which is a major input towards the process. And we're now in the process of working on that global report. So this is, again, just a simple schematic of the timelines. So in this decision 15.6, the parties were requested to develop and submit an INDISAP by COP16, to submit a national report by February of 2026, and then there would be this global review at COP17. And so the INDISAP and the national target submission establishes what countries are going to do, and then the national report includes information on the progress towards those national targets, and it includes information on the headline and binary indicators as well as other indicators, and it is structured reporting. So if you compare to the 6th national report, these are some big differences. The 6th national report had more unstructured information. There were no indicators that were included in the template, and the reporting was on global targets, not national targets. So the information going into the global review, if all the parties complete their national report, will be very strong because of this structured information and because of the submission of national targets, which say what a party is going to do, and then they report on what they said they were going to do. So that's the structure of how the information works. And then all of this would, of course, be the information that feeds into the global review with this national report, which is based on the national targets being the primary source of information. The decision 1632 includes what I'm going to call principles for the global review. This is in paragraph 13 to 16. And these paragraphs specify that the global report should include balanced consideration of the 3 objectives of the convention, consider specific challenges, especially for developing countries, in particular LDCs and SIDS, draw upon data and information provided by parties and the best available peer-reviewed scientific, technical, and technological information, as well as traditional knowledge, ensure balance, transparency, and inclusivity in the preparation of the report, and include peer reviews and reviews by SAPSTA and SBI. And this is how it was established. So I'll say in paragraphs 17 and 18 of this same decision, it also outlines structural elements for the global review and sources of information. Structural elements for the global report and sources of information for the global report. So there's quite a lot of information that's in this decision on what the global report will be. This is the timeline for the entire global review. The decision 1632 has established an ad hoc scientific technical advisory group, which will guide the process and provide advice to the Secretariat in drafting the report. And it is included then a number of steps where it will go back to parties, to SEPSTA, to SBI. We are at the point where the hashtag has been established, and there will be an annotated outline of the global report, which will be produced very soon. This document, as per the timeline, which is in the decision 1632, will be circulated for peer review, and it will be provided to SAPSTA. This annotated outline is expected to be released sometime in the next month, probably about a month from now. And then that would provide a first view for parties and others to try to think through what the structure of the report will be. And this will then inform the decision or the recommendations that will happen at SEPSTA. This will then sort of be the blueprint for what the report is going to be, which will then be used to draft the report, the report will be drafted primarily between February and May of 2026, because the national reports are the primary source of information for this review. And so we would expect that during those months is the primary drafting time, and in May there would be a version available. So as you can see, this timeline is very tight, with the national reports being submitted, and if they're submitted from all countries in February of 2026, then this only provides about 2 months for the drafting. And so the timeline is really, really tight, which means that there's not a lot of a window for late reports, or no window actually for late reports. And then I wanted to conclude by coming back to decision 15.6 to say what was the purpose of this global review that was established in decision 15.6. And it says that parties may take the outcome of the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the framework into account in future revisions and implementation of their NBSAPs, with a view to improving actions and efforts as appropriate. So to summarize, the review was established in order to inform planning and implementation. And so it's a key moment in time to have this midterm review and to see how countries are progressing and to decide what to do at COP17. So thank you very much, and I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Gillian, for these insights, and that's a great bridge to now give a floor to Juliette, and with also Marcel's participation and inputs to reflect further on. Yeah, as you said, Gillian, this is a critical moment and quite exciting moment as well for the CBD. So now Juliette and Marcel will share also their thoughts about how we can ensure that this delivers these objectives. And I want just to remind everyone that this is for collective discussion, so feel free to engage with the Q&A tab and share some thoughts as we go from Mr. Memarian, but also Gillian's and now Juliette's and Marcel's presentation, and we'll address them together afterwards. Juliette, I now hand this over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna share my slides first and check if it's working. I think it's full screen in 1, 2. Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here during this webinar to talk about what we think could be one of the central innovations for the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and for strengthening its implementation. So as you may know, at IDRI, we've been working a lot on these questions for a while, particularly at the interface between research and decision-making in global governance. We've been following broader trend across environmental regimes, which is the combination of common global objectives and targets and goals, a bottom-up approach to implementation, and to support that, the emergence of more robust transparency, accountability mechanisms. So applied to the CBD, this is now materializing through the global review as introduced by Gillian. So together with PBL and as part of a collaboration with them and with the colleagues that you can read on this slide, so myself, Marcel, Agnès, Rose, but also others, we're working to support this process as well with other actors, scientists, stakeholders that I also can see are participating to this webinar. And what we want to do is drawing some lessons from experiences, co-develop concrete proposals to make this review as impactful as possible to support in the end, as said by Gillian, by the end of representation, the implementation of the GBF and goals and targets for the CBD. So let's start with the obvious. What's the point of setting ambitious targets if we don't have a serious way to check if we're on track? So you know that the RT targets were not met. One key reason could be that the mechanism to assess and adjust was really not there, and no compliance mechanism, not a lot of assessment to check if we are on track. So with the global review, we now have this chance to fix that, but we have to go what we can call a static picture. And I wanted to use some kind of analogy with health. So maybe it's a bit like Western style medicine, but the global report could be some kind of scanner of scan. Are we good? Do we have a good health? Are we on track to achieve targets? The dialogues could be some kind of medical consultation, bringing several experts to interpret the data, refine the diagnosis, because we do have technical dialogues that could happen at the margin of SEPSTA and SBI at summer 2026. And so we know that we need both technical knowledge, what causes biodiversity loss, and also contextual understanding of what's happening in a country, what's being done, some other perspectives. But then what? We wouldn't send, I think, a patient home without any treatment or regular checkups. So we need some kind of prescription, and we need regular checkups and a treatment. What must change? What kind of habits do you have to change? What are the next steps? So that would be something that we feel is kind of missing right now in the conversation. So there is this great potential, just to sum up, that we can in theory have from a transparency framework. And so we know that this is with a view to enhance implementation and to assess collective progress, as you can see on the text that also Gillian mentioned. And we can think about the potential that the global review could deliver, building trust and accountability by providing credible, comparable, timely data, enabling and facilitating domestic action and ambition, which is really maybe the core potential of this global review, highlighting collective gaps, but also inspiring some reforms, informing future planning, also fostering peer learning, mutual support, learning from successes, learning from innovations, but also obstacles, support access to finance. And we know that this is a key topic nowadays by making needs and progress and obstacles more visible and maybe underline the key stakeholders that should change. And it can also help shape the next steps in global cooperation, including maybe the post-2030 framework, because we know that we have to achieve those 2050 goals to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. So it's not just about tracking, it's about fostering some kind of collective intelligence, learning, adjusting, preparing for the future. But we know that the potential is not enough. It needs to be activated. It still needs to be activated. And so what we feel is kind of missing right now is the treatment, the prescription part, to turn this diagnosis into real change. So yes, the COP text allows the review to formulate recommendations, and the idea of a ratchet mechanism is mentioned in the COP text, but the wording is kind of too vague. And even if the largest part of the work is a national implementation and strengthening ambition and implementation at the national level, it only applies to the national level. And maybe we could also go beyond the national level and include other actors in the international scale, try to also consider international cooperation. So in a word, there's no, as for now, no formal space to consider the outputs of the global review, of the global report, and the key recommendations. No structured process to follow up on what we would consider as the main obstacles to address. So what we would maybe need to think about what are the better way to connect the technical and the political phase of the global review process. We could also explore the way to institutionalize the follow-up process after COP17. Always not prescriptive, but facilitative, could take many ways. We have many options. And what we feel is missing is also the clarity on what kind of actions is expected and from whom at what level. So just to compare with the climate global stocktake, in the text there is a mention to the fact that parties must take into account the global stocktake outcome, which culminated at COP28. And they must take that into account to update to show how they take that into account in the new NDC. And we are not at the same level for the CBD, I think. So it's really good on paper, but we have to acknowledge the fact that this is not magical. And these kinds of review also face a lot of political and structural challenges. And we saw that for other multilateral processes and transparency frameworks, about tensions, again, over who should act and who should pay, for instance, like it's the case already at the CBD, during CBD negotiations, like also of clarity over key concepts. Maybe this is also something that we should address. No common understanding on key terms and key words, and maybe no real space for political negotiations over addressing those strong and hard questions. So transparency, in a word, is not transformation per se. It's a precondition. It's necessary, but it's not enough. So what could help to make that to make that happen? So there are many options, and maybe just an idea for now could be a work program after COP17 if we feel that we are missing some collaboration and work over 2050 pathways, for instance, supporting parties in aligning their trajectories and inform the post-2030 framework. It's just an idea. There are many, many others, but we need to have this conversation over standards, over definitions. We need those spaces for negotiation and for and informal spaces as well to address those pragmatic address those conflicts that are really here. And there are many options for the prescription, as I said. I think we don't need something that is too rigid. We need something that is quite dynamic. And there are a few options. And again, we are really keen to use this space, this webinar, to hear from you if you have any innovations or any idea that could help us to think about what could be addressed in the COP17 recommendations or after that. So we can first identify priorities, what's the most damaging, what is really preventing real progress towards achieving the targets, what needs urgent attention. Maybe we could also clarify those definitions, and maybe what key concepts do you feel are missing this common understanding and could help the negotiations and help the implementation of the GBF. And this is also, there are also a lot of options for supporting national implementation and for supporting also other stakeholders and implementers, as I call them, or civil society organizations on the ground. So maybe there is also a way to identify some options to help to have some more capacity building. There are also many options regarding assistance, accelerators, etc., etc. So how can we make that happen? Sorry, I have some technical issues. Okay, and just before COP17 in Cali, PBL and IDRI published this policy brief. What we felt was really key in order to have a strong and impactful global review. As I said, we wanted to have some purpose-oriented review, and this is possible. We do now have the window of opportunity to make it relevant and make it impactful. What we felt was important was also to have a multi-evidence-based global review integrating multiple sources. For now, the global review primary source is, of course, the national reports, but we do know that there are also other sources out there that could complement the national reports. And what we felt was really important based on experiences was the inclusion of perspectives from other actors, from civil society, from indigenous peoples and local communities and other non-state actors, because they are the one really dealing with the implementation as well on the ground. And there are many innovations and obstacles that we need to understand, and this co-creation of recommendation has shown really key results in this type of exercise. We do now have this window of opportunity, so we know that now it's kind of possible to have this legitimate and credible basis, and we need to strengthen this technical phase. So the national reports are the basis for the global report, but it's only one side of the sources and data and perspectives that are out there. And as for the options to consider for the technical phase, for the global report, for now, so the advisory group is now considering the outline, I said by Gillian, and we do have some guidance from the COP text. And what we feel is important is also to go beyond the target by target setting and try to identify some systemic transformations and barriers to lift. So it's easier also to translate into a political decision. And of course, it could be based on party reports and other sources. Also, what could be interesting is to highlight some lessons and some innovations that could be scaled up. And just to highlight the fact that there is a risk, the fact that now we could have low information base because there is a risk of having not enough national reports by February 2026. And as said by Gillian, the zero draft is due the timeline is quite tight, and we could have limited review opportunities for this report. So this is something to take into account. And for the dialogues, which we feel are super important to, again, having this kind of co-development of solutions and translation into a political decision. What we feel is important is to use lessons from other exercises or conversation to shape those inclusive and impactful conversations. And there is also the risk of not having dialogues at all, because in the COP text, this is subject to the availability of resources, so it's quite uncertain. And there is also the risk of having poorly structured dialogues. What we feel could be a way of strengthening this kind of enhancing those dialogues is to consider different clusters, different key topics and questions with facilitators, for instance, and mixing parties and non-parties in that exercise. This slide is just to illustrate the fact that we will be counting on the submission of national reports by February 2026, even if we do not have all of the NBSAPs so far. So, as said by Mr. Deputy Minister at the beginning of the webinar, this is also key, that we need to support the dynamic behind submitting NBSAPs, and then we only have 1 year, less than 1 year, to submit the national reports. So this is just to underline the fact that the national reports is the primary sources, but maybe won't be enough to have some kind of a complete picture of the state of implementation of the GBF. Just to finish, just give you a few words about what we aim to do. What we feel is important is to have collective work on this important and this important tool that has a lot of potential. But we feel also that we have to be grounded in reality, rooted in reality, and that we are committed to support this process, knowing the fact that it's also really facing a lot of political conflicts in the end. So what we are doing basically is, like many others, we want to fill the gaps in the technical phase. We are doing a lot of work at IDRI and at PBL on different topics, on biodiversity finance, on scenarios and pathways. We also want to facilitate dialogues with parties and CSOs to try to think ahead about what is possible to make this global review impactful. Again, to make it have impact and effects on the real economy on the ground, targeting stakeholders that do have harmful activities and that need to be reformed, among others. So yeah, just a few messages to finish this presentation is, we want something that is building a community in the longer term. Maybe it could inform future frameworks, and it has to be improved over time, of course. We need to prepare for the post-COP17 process. As for now, we need to think about that, because it's not just technical, it's political, and a strong review must combine different stuff, different data in order to do so, multiple knowledge systems and perspectives, and it has to be, of course, feasible and grounded in reality. If you want to reach out, please feel free to do so, and I'm looking forward to hear the perspectives from other stakeholders and from parties, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juliette. So Marcel, if you want to follow up on that maybe and share some additional reflections.
Yes, thanks, Agnes. And I will be short after Juliette's presentation. But as Gillian explained at her presentation, the global review is the process that will happen at COP17 and that will culminate in a COP decision to inform planning and implementation. And I think it's relevant that we also, through the research that we do and through these dialogues, try to unpack that a bit further. And we like to emphasize 2 points that are important, maybe as the sort of the assumptions that we have in the research that we do and the dialogues that we try to organize. And the first is that we really like to achieve or to create an insight in possible options and alternatives for political follow-up to the global review. And the second point is that we need to get a realistic understanding of the review as a mechanism within the CBD. And I think it's important that we look beyond what we will do for COP17 and take a longer perspective on that. So with respect to the first point, the political follow-up, I think we argue with our project that we need to spend time in the coming period on what could be the elements of the COP decision or the COP decisions, as the Deputy Minister put it, and how these COP decisions could become part of a longer-term process of global review and course correction within the CBD, and what kinds of informations are needed for this and who need to be involved in this. So as Juliette emphasized, this needs to become a multi-stakeholder, multi-knowledge-based process where different types of sources and actors engage in a review process. So we have to think a bit beyond the moment of COP17 and the report and a specific decision. And we have to, I think we argue, we have to think deeper about how that can look like. And the second point, the realistic understanding of the global review. The challenges to get a global report ready before COP17 are clear. For example, with respect to the national reports that need to be analyzed, Gillian clearly stated the window is very small. And we think it's important to realize that we're in a process of institution building and learning. How can we actually make this global review mechanism work? It's clear that this can't be done overnight. So we probably well advised to think a bit of a more pragmatic approach in this and think what can we do up till COP17 and at COP17, but also in terms of the institutional development of the building of the global review mechanism, also think how that fits in the longer process, because this is not a one-off thing. This is probably, if it's going to be effective, will be with us for the coming 5 to 20 years or so, who knows? But I think it's realistic to take that into account when further developing the work. And with our project, we aim to contribute in 2 ways, I guess. On the one hand, to think about the possible roadmaps for decision making, so the actual process within the CBD, the involvement of actors, etc., and elaborating the more substantive pathways to think about, well, what is actually needed to achieve the 2030 targets and the 2050 goals, and in that way also contribute to create a sort of common priorities for stepping up efforts if needed. So, yeah, maybe that is an addition to Juliette's presentation, and then maybe also as a lead into the panelists. And I look forward to also hear from them on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel, and thank you very much, Juliette, as well for providing this rich material for us to move this thinking forward and also engage with participants. Thank you also very much to those of you who've started to interact with the question and answers. So you can also see that in the answered tab, several answers were provided in writing, but we will get back to several of these points in the discussion in the second part of the webinar to have some more lively discussions. But I think you all raised a very important point regarding the technical workings of this collective collecting evidence and putting this into a dialogue. So now I will invite the 3 panelists to launch their video if they can, to start the panel discussion that should take us one step further. So we have Jean-Bruno Mikisa, is a representative from Gabon and is also the SAPSTA chair, so the chair of a subsidiary body on scientific, technical and technological advice. for the CBD. We do have Eduardo Gonzalez, who works at the National Commission of Protected Natural Areas in Mexico, and Jorge Carreño, who is Senior Policy Advisor at the Forest Peoples Program. Thank you very much for being with us today and agreeing to sharing some views. So I have a few questions for you to react also on what was presented by our various speakers today. Maybe starting with you, Jean-Bruno, and as chair of SAPSTA, you are already the middle person between the scientific and technical expertise that is out there on biodiversity and the COP. So can you give us some insight of what you expect from the global review and the role of that the SAPSTA will play specifically, and also based on the experience of the SAPSTA in bringing all the knowledge into policy material for the COP, what should be put in place for it to work effectively and up to the expectations?
Yeah, thank you, Agnes. Good afternoon to all. I will be brief. From my part, we are before a big challenge to reach the global review for the next COP. In this sense, we have many different pieces to make into account for the review. The headline and binary indicators, and BSAP content, the 7 national report, like Julian said, but also to consider the role of non-state actors in the process. It is very, very important to take into account. Another thing is the opportunity to engage academic and expert community to contribute as a reviewer. The global review should be grounded on scientific and technical evidence, like Julian said, to support implementation on the ground, because one thing is to have the global review, another is to how to implement it on the ground. And I think that it is important. Another thing is to convince parties to adopt relevant decisions during the next COP. In that sense, it will be useful to use case studies, scenarios, and I think that it will be better. And I think EDDRI, I think that we can play a big role, and I think you have your place in the process. I think I can stop here. Thank you, Anis.
Thank you, Jean-Bruno, and I think we'll get back to several of the points you just mentioned. I will now turn to Eduardo, since you work for a national institution and you're also another type of bridge, if I may say, between also the national implementers and what take place in the international fora. So based on your expertise and your experience as an implementer of the Global Biodiversity Framework, what would be needed from this global review process to support your work at the national scale? And on the other hand, also, how do you see your contributions to such a process?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Agnes. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been a really interesting couple of talks before me, so I just want to try to be brief, like you said, a little bit from a perspective of an institution who is responsible at the same time of being in the negotiations, of being in the COPs, but also try to transmit all of this message, all of these important documents to the operational perspective of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Here in Canam, Mexico, we work mainly with protected areas. We have 232 protected areas in all over the country for around 24% of marine protected areas and a little bit around 12% of terrestrial protected areas. So in all of this territory for around 100 million hectares, we have a lot of people working on the field, working and trying to fight a fire, try to conserve an ecosystem, make restoration, make any of these operational actions who are key aspect or the most important aspect of the Global Biodiversity Framework, who is the implementation of these actions. And then once we go to the COPs, once we go to all of these meetings, international meetings, then we have to translate the message of these enormous efforts, these enormous goals that we have globally into their day-by-day actions on the field. So that's one of the main challenges that we have as an institution in order to be really how do I say it? To be really conscious about what we are transmitting on this global biodiversity framework. So the global, this, what we're working right now, this key message should be not only political or technical, but also consider the operational aspects. So we need to translate all of this message into a third language that can be used after the negotiations, after these type of meetings, these type of workshops, so we can bring those message into the field. The review of the global framework, it's considering really specific needs and priorities of each regions, valuing the knowledge, the traditional practices, and it should be focused on a more operational aspects, but also in how to facilitate the access to financial technological resources, and promoting one of the things that we were discussing last time is also at the end, the practices, the good practices that we have in each country should be part of this global review, like a really important part, because at the end, that's how we're going to translate this message into the field with examples, good examples of good practices from each country, from each party. At the end, this is a common effort. So we need to consider this. Like Juliette said, it's a collective and a flexible effort, but we also have to consider the people working on the field in the day by day and how to transmit this message to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. And I think this is also a natural follow-up for Joji to build on what you just said, because Joji, a large part of the work you do is to make sure that the voice of indigenous peoples and of local communities is heard in biodiversity governance, but also that their knowledge is respected and that international discussion can build on the rich experience they have in supporting biodiversity protection and sustainable use. So what is important for you in the global review, and what are your expectations also regarding its potential to support the role that indigenous peoples already have in taking care of biodiversity? You're still muted, Joji, sorry. It looks like your mic is activated. You can try now.
Yes, thanks very much. Thanks, Agnes, and thanks to the previous speakers for providing the foundation of some of the reflections that I wish to make. What are some of the potential outcomes of the global review that I'm very interested in? First, I'm very interested in the fulfillment of the envisioned whole of government and whole of society approach, and in the processes and outcomes of the global review. So as a co-lead author of Local Biodiversity Outlooks 1 and 2, which were complementary reports to GBO4 and GBO5, an important lesson that was learned is that weaknesses in fully counting the contributions of indigenous peoples and local communities actually affected the lack of progress in the implementation of the 2011 to 2020 biodiversity strategy. Therefore, the mechanism for ensuring the interface between the national reports and also the reports from non-state actors will be extremely important. In the negotiations, we did not get full detail about how this interface would happen. And also in the hashtag, we are now looking at exactly how national reporting and non-state actors should complement each other. And I think that that's a very important aspect. The IIF, the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity, the International Women's Biodiversity Network, and the Centers of Distinction on Indigenous and Local Knowledge have actually committed to publish another local biodiversity outlooks alongside the global review. And it would be very insightful to see the interface and complementarities between government-led reporting and that of non-state actors. One more point that I wish to underline is that, of course, the global review is embedded in the whole process of planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, as Gillian highlighted in the COP decisions. And actually, success in these earlier steps and processes will shape and determine the effectiveness of the global review. So what has been highlighted is the number of national reports that will be submitted. But we really need to delve deeper into the effectiveness of the PMRR processes at country and local levels, because this will actually lay the foundations for a robust global review. As it is said, the test of the pudding is in the eating. So we must not just focus on the global review and a diagnosis of the outcomes, but we must also diagnose the processes themselves, because a holistic analysis of the collective actions of all important actors, what has been named the whole of government and whole of society approach, and a strong attention on the inclusion of indigenous peoples and local communities as critical actors for implementation. For example, in the Philippines, where I'm based, as part of the NBSAP process, the indigenous peoples organizations and support groups got together and developed the Indigenous Peoples Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. And that will complement as well as contribute directly to the NBSAP. So just reflecting on the country, unless this process went together, and I consider this a good practice, then we wouldn't probably have such a good NBSAP or a national report without that kind of interface between the government and the indigenous peoples. So yes, I think those are my comments for now, and I'm looking forward to an exchange and interaction.
Thank you very much, Georgie. And I think I will turn back to you, because several of the points you raised are also discussed by participants in the question and answer tab related to the interaction between national accountability and collective accountability, and also on really what it means to get non-state actors on board. But maybe following up on several of the points you shared related to the examples of what works well in your sharing the experience of indigenous peoples in the Philippines. I would like to turn back to Jean-Bruno and then to Eduardo to ask them also if they have ideas from their different viewpoints on the type of processes that were successful in bringing different stakeholders around the table to ensure that they deliver the biodiversity commitments, and also how to take them further down the road. I don't know, Eduardo, would you want to start based also on how it works for the protected areas in Mexico?
Well, first of all, say that in Mexico we have already an NBSAP, who is really a really important effort doing by the Mexican government. It's responsibility of CONABIO. It's one of the governmental institutions that you probably know. All of this in this forum is one of the most important institutions regarding the follow-up of the GBF. We already have a Global Biodiversity NBSAP, which right now we are kind of trying to implement into the field. We are changing all of these, like I said, these global efforts into how Mexico going to try to fulfill all of these goals. Particularly in the case of protected areas, we have been working during the last 2 years in the expansion of the system of protected areas in Mexico. We declared around 50 new protected areas during 2024. We expand around 10 million hectares in the country, and now we're working on how to keep on the expansion of these protected areas, but at the same time, not just expand to expand, because at the end, you need resources for these new protected areas. So we're in the same time working with the engagement of the communities in order to have protected areas who has actually people who are working day by day, not only from the governmental side, but also from the communities to conserve them, to sustainable use them, to restore them. And all of these, like I said, all of these efforts should be part of the global review. All of these small efforts also should be part of the global review, because at the end is all of these key message who are going to show us as decision makers that all of the global biodiversity framework, it's a really important tool. It's a really the most important instrument regarding biodiversity conservation, but also it states goals that are more and more difficult for the countries to fulfill. In the case of protected areas, 30% of the conservation of the territory, it's a huge effort regarding terrestrial, particularly because we have growing cities, we have growing needs that needs this territory, and conserve them is going to be a really big challenge in order to actually fulfill the goals, but uh, gave the people the opportunity to expand. So we need to start working in probably smaller protected areas, working in connectivity, landscapes, working with OMEX, with OECMs. So all of these small efforts, these little efforts that are huge regarding the importance of conservation should be part also of the review, also part of the key message that should be bringing to the decision making, and not only just thinking in expanding the surface for conservation, but also doing it with the communities, considering even these little landscapes that are part of a bigger scale of conservation areas.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Jean-Bruno, if you want to come in, I'm also thinking you may have some thoughts to share from your national experience in Gabon related to bringing all these type of stakeholder and experiences of implementation on the ground as well in relation to the implementation of your NBSAP.
Thank you, Agnes. In Gabon, I'm not really responsible to elaborate NBSAP or the seventh report. But I know we discuss every time with the coordinator, and I think that all actors are around the table to discuss how to elaborate, how to implement the next NBSAP. And I think that really I can't bring more information because it is not my responsibility to work on that. But I ask them to be really constructive, to bring all people around the work, and I think that the work is ongoing now. Thank you, Anis.
Thank you very much, Jean-Bruno. And maybe now we can also start addressing the many points that were raised in writing, and still, so beyond the national experience, but also the global work that we will all be put at during the global review. Specifically, we had a question about the role of researchers and academics during the global review, also interacting with the SAPSA. Jean-Bruno, do you want to keep the floor and address this related to the engagement of academics in the research community?
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think that academic and scientific are a big role to push the process, and I think that they can be reviewed, because now I just established the hashtag, and it is the responsibility of hashtag to think how to elaborate the global review. And it is not closed, it is open, the process is open. And I think that all actors can involve as a reviewer like that. The process really is open.
Thank you. That's very good to know, and I strongly invite all the participants from the research and academia community to be able to engage later in this process. We have another question, maybe to follow up on the diversity of stakeholders to engage as well. And actually, there's more of a process discussion on how the contributions from the non-state actors will be considered in the global review. So I'm turning maybe to Gillian. I know you've answered in writing, but maybe for everyone to hear what is in place regarding all the reporting mechanisms that are managed by the Secretariat for non-state actors. And maybe if I may turn as well after that to Deputy Minister May Marian, because I understand as well that the different dialogues that Armenia wants to lead are also related to engaging with those different types of non-state actors. So it would be good to have you as a duet answering this question. Gillian, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll start by saying that there was a template for the submission of commitments from actors other than national governments that was adopted in this decision 1632 that I mentioned earlier. We are still in the process of operationalizing this template in the online reporting tool. As I mentioned in the chat, the priority of the Secretariat was to first get the national reporting template online, as everyone knows that this is a priority, and then now to focus on the work that's happening on getting this non-state actor template online. So this is the stage that we are at now, and this should be online within the next few months, and we'll have the ability to receive commitments from these actors. I would say that in the discussions that the hashtag has been having, there's a definite interest in trying to reach out to non-state actors to get commitments, but also to encourage them to optionally report which the optional reporting was a part of the commitment template. And so that would be the idea, is that the hashtag feels that that would be important to understand not just what they've committed to doing, but what they're actually doing, so that that information could be summarized in the report. Information on which sections of the report would include this type of information will be part of the annotated outline. And this is what I wanted to say next, is that the annotated outline will be open for peer review soon. And this will be an opportunity for everyone to contribute to the peer review. So although the peer review parties will definitely be encouraged to participate in the peer review, there's an opportunity for any other actors, including from the research and academic community, to also provide their views and submit comments to the peer review. And so this will happen very soon. And I think that this is another way to engage in terms of sharing your views in advance of the dialogues that you mentioned before. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Gillian. Deputy Minister May Marian, if you want to also further elaborate on that and discuss how you see the bringing all the non-state actors on board.
So thank you so much for inviting me. I think that the dialogue during the COP17 should emphasize that achieving biodiversity goals cannot be done by governments alone, and non-state actors should be recognized as key partners among others in both implementation and monitoring of biodiversity policies. I think that the interactive dialogues that strengthen the voices of civil society, especially indigenous people and local communities, should be strengthened and should be more and more initiated. These kind of dialogues to share the knowledge across different stakeholder groups. And yes, the discussion should be in place between the governments, businesses, and NGOs to create scalable and inclusive biodiversity solutions. So the governments alone we cannot do the job, and the global review will show that this is more than true, and we should act all together, and the voices of local population and other actors should be heard more strongly in order to strengthen the action in biodiversity and protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as a follow-up question, do you already have specific ideas of the types of dialogue you want to organize and how to structure them?
I think during the COP17 we have the idea and we will organize interactive dialogues that will strengthen the voices of civil society, especially indigenous people and local communities, and YAF also of course. And we should also invite the private sector for a strong engagement, particularly around natural capital, counting, sustainable supply chains, and so on. Still, we are on an initial phase of planning processes, but the idea is to be bridge between all stakeholders.
Thank you again, and maybe also to summarize the different questions we received. Do you have plans to have them also before the COP in the run-up to it, or is this something you have considered?
Right now, I cannot answer fully because we are in a planning process. But the idea is to have it in before and to be engaged more in different discussions, in order to have the ideas and thoughts of different stakeholders, in order to be a good bridge between them.
Thank you very much. And also because you mentioned specifically indigenous peoples and local communities, I just want to ask Georgie a very specific point that was raised in the question regarding the update of a local biodiversity outlook. Is this a type of source that you consider providing?
Yes, very much so. I already mentioned that we plan to bring out another edition of Local Biodiversity Outlooks. This is actually a commitment by the IAFB and the other partners. And as in the past, we will be collecting case studies on the goals and targets, but we're also very interested to cover deeply Section C of the GBF and those cross-cutting issues. Because beyond the goals and targets, I think those cross-cutting issues will be very, very important. But also in this regard, because we were also touching on processes prior to COP17, like just as these decisions are being operationalized at the national level, this also needs to be operationalized through the various CBD subsidiary bodies and the mechanisms. What I mean is that, in fact, through the SBSTA meeting, the SBI, but also importantly, the subsidiary body on 8J, I think these bodies will give strong advice prior to the COP17 that will actually strengthen the inputs for the global review and the global report. For example, the subsidiary body 8J has oversight over the traditional knowledge indicators. And these indicators are, of course, completely linked to our headline and binary indicators in the entire monitoring framework. So right now, there are big capacity building efforts within civil society, including with indigenous peoples, to really understand what are the tools available and the methodologies for using the monitoring framework. And of course, I want to highlight the indicator on land use change and land tenure in indigenous and local community territories, the one on sustainable use and traditional occupations, and importantly, participation, the direct participation in decision making. So we're also looking forward very much to those meetings of those subsidiary bodies as very important events that will strengthen the inputs for COP17 in further guidance and tools. So I think that will lay the foundation for a good COP17 review. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Georgie. That's really insightful as well. So I will try to share a question with the panelists, building on many different interventions that all relate to the national report. And I think most of you actually emphasized the importance of getting these national reports on time and for them to be representative of all geographies and all countries. So maybe we can reflect a bit upon that. And Eduardo, if I can turn towards you, maybe because you're engaged in national reporting as well. Do you have specific points of attention that you want to share with us in order to ensure that all countries deliver their national reports, either from your experience in Mexico or over you may have witnessed? Is this something that runs smoothly?
Well, like I said, we have an institution responsible for the NBSAP reporting. In the case of Mexico, it's CONABIO. I think they have done really incredible work during the last after the signing of the approval of the Global Biodiversity Framework, because once we start working on the GBF as a country, we start updating at the same time the MBSAP. So the only thing that happens, and I think it's a lesson learned, is to be prepared for these transitions on federal government, because we have a transition last year in October, and once this transition of federal government occurred, Conavio needs to rescue all of the work that has been done in the previous administration, try to merge to match it with the incoming priorities, and this is what has been done during the last year. And I think this is a really important effort that sometimes is not known, because we only report as a country, as a party, and not always are so aware of the transitional changes that occurs inside the government, inside even political priorities. So it's a really, really big effort that Conavio has been doing, updating these goals in the MBSAP, and at the same time align it with a more long-term view perspective that we have been working the MBOMEX, as we call it, to the MBSAP of Mexico. It has a long-term view, not only for the Global Biodiversity Framework. It was actually conceived for a longer time. So when the Global Biodiversity Framework was approved, what we do is it was kind of doing the match between what was thinked for a long time in order to match with these new goals, and then match with the incoming administration transitions that I was talking. So it's a really big effort that not all the time is considered, but it should be part of the reflections and the lessons learned from each country, and for the parties for the review also.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. And I think I would like to turn back briefly to Deputy Minister May Marian again, because I think in your introductory remarks, you mentioned that the presidency will also try and really bring as many countries as possible to meet this reporting deadline of February 2026. And we heard from Gillian how tight the deadline is. What do you see your role as presidency to support this work that really needs to happen in each country?
So we see our role firstly on our side to finalize our MBSAP and to present. And with this, we understand and we think that how tough is this task for a developing country like Armenia. And during having discussion on the updated NBSAP and more importantly on the financial part of the action plan for the NBSAP, we face challenges, but we want to mobilize the internal resources. We think that this is very important and crucial part for each country to mobilize the internal resources. So for understanding how we can move forward with the NBSAP. So our NBSAP, we are closely communicating with the Secretariat in order to see what can be the best examples and the best steps forward. And based on our experience with our NBSAP and discussions with the Secretariat, we will more engage with the countries, and we can share our experience, especially having the challenges. I think that our country will share with many of other countries, and we can jointly move forward with our agenda.
Thank you very much. And so more on a technical point of view, Gillian, do you have anything set up within the Secretariat to support also parties meet these reporting commitments?
We are planning on releasing guidance on the national reports in order to help facilitate countries with the completion of the information in the online reporting tool. But I would say that the major effort to promote or to support countries with the national reports would be the JEF project. So for the eligible countries, there's JEF 8 funding for the national reports. And we are actively working with UNDP and UNEP, who are the implementing agencies, to identify ways to ensure that countries are getting the support they need in a timely fashion. Hopefully, most of the eligible countries are already aware of this. I believe that all of the countries have approved their JEF 8 projects. So this should be the expectation of all of them.
Thank you very much, Gillian. Maybe also, sorry, I haven't got back much to Juliette and Marcel yet, but I'm thinking that as part of, I mean, the thoughts you shared with us also show how important, but also quite demanding it is a commitment for non-state actors or for parties who may not have the capacities to fully engage in all these discussions. So do you have thoughts to share on really how to bring everyone on board beyond, the formal exercises?
Thank you, Agnes, and also thank you to everyone and every speaker. Just to say that your perspectives are really appreciated. And I just wanted to add that I think the Secretariat of the CBD is going to organize those regional dialogues to support the parties in submitting the national reports. And there was this question around supporting parties in submitting the national reports early. And I think what could be super interesting is also to have some kind of community that is aware of what parties having difficulties to do in order to submit the national report early enough, because we have this international civil society community and researchers and a lot of people that are based in a lot of different countries. And we know that we may have collectively the capacity to check in. And for instance, we know that in France, they are now starting the process in preparing the national reports for February 2026. So we have the communities already. We just maybe need to connect the dots between the different communities to share information and not to blame parties that are having difficulties to submit the national report, but also to try to understand what is difficult and maybe to find some resources to support them. And what I think could be also really relevant is to have some kind of regional extraction of messages already, because we know that the global review, and I just wanted to raise that because I saw this question about making the global review relevant to a lot of different parties and actors. I just wanted to flag that I think having some kind of regional discussion over, okay, we've seen that we have those obstacles already in our common national reports. Maybe we could try to identify some recommendations at the regional level that could make sense for different countries and different situations. But we have the difficulty, I think, the difficult task to make it relevant for all, because this is a collective global review, while not being too diluted. So this is, I think, a difficult task, but a regional scale would be a great first step to try to address this question. And about what you asked about this, how to support parties and stakeholders and actors that are that have less resources. What we understood from other processes is that in the end, if you don't actively support underrepresented communities and parties, in the end, you'll have messages and recommendations that are not representative and that are quite not equitable. And so I think it's really a key aspect of the next few months and years to support communities and representatives with resources, going to important dialogues, try to make them more loud and at different levels, either at the international level with this global review process, but also at the national level while preparing for your national report. So there are many scales to address. I don't have like a clear idea on how to do that, but I think there are a lot of coalitions, a lot of regional organizations, a lot of platforms out there that could be mobilized in order to do so. And there are many meetings happening, and maybe this could be a back-to-back meeting, for instance, having a small additional resource being allocated to address the global review.
Sorry, we're juggling with microphones here. I think we're fine now. Thank you so much, Juliette. So I have a couple of extra questions on the process, and I also saw recently some more comments coming about actually topics and contents that need to be that could be covered by the review, and which also would require specific types of actors to engage in. So if you bear with me, I may have these other questions related to the process, and turning to Jean-Bruno specifically about the SAP staff, there's a question regarding how I would say flexible the outline will be, and where we will be at SAPSTA 27. So for example, based on the first annotated outline in the peer review, to which extent further recommendations and insights coming from the civil society can be taken in? Do you have some reflections to share on that?
Yeah, thank you, Agnès. I think that I can't anticipate the work of hashtag. As I said earlier, the hashtag is just established, and they just try to put their work plan, and we are waiting for their outcomes, because it is not the responsibility of the chair to do the work. It is as I said, the work is open, and I hope all actors will be ready to participate to the process, because when the hashtag will finish their work, we will organize the peer review, and I think that academic, scientific will be invited to review the global review. But at this stage, it is premature to say something what we will have, what will be the type of the outcomes, because I give the chance to the hashtag to have the outcome before we will pronounce. Thank you, Agnès.
Thank you, Jean-Bruno, for sharing this. So my last question for now, related to the actual process of the review, is the balance between individual progress of countries and collective global progress. I remember, Gillian, in your presentation, you also highlighted how actually the new set of indicators, the new way the reporting is done, gives a greater emphasis on countries' progress. So how do you see this evolving? Like what balance should we strike between individual progress of countries and collective global progress? Do you have views already as part of the global review and how it will unfold?
I would say that the global report is a collective, it is a review of collective progress. So in terms of what will be captured in the global report and the global review, it will very much be looking at the collective progress of countries, so the aggregate of how countries are doing. I think the indicators provide a new opportunity for us to do this in a more transparent and less subjective way. So instead of having subjective assessments of how progress is going, we'll have more quantitative assessments of how progress is going. However, it will still be summarized at the regional and global levels. Thanks.
Thank you, Gillian. So moving towards some topics, I saw that there are several questions that were raised related to that. So just taking a big overview, I saw questions related to addressing the finance issue, and I think this is also something Eduardo mentioned a few times. So how do we ensure that the global review properly addresses the question of financing implementation of the global biodiversity framework? I saw another point related to agriculture, with some thoughts on how do we get sectoral ministries, either of agriculture, but also ministries of economy on board. I think maybe that's the first point about like the thematic issues that we usually face when we want to implement biodiversity policies, and how the global review could send clear messages to these type of actors. I'm not sure who to turn to first on that note, but maybe Mr. Marian, because you are also in the Ministry of Environment, how do you consider engaging with other ministries, either in our media, but also collectively, I mean, at the global scale, other ministries for COP17? Are there things you consider on that note?
So thank you. We firmly think that Ministry of Economy and Agriculture their role is very crucial in the achieving of the results. And in Armenia, I think in the past we were having some problems on discussing the biodiversity issues and the climate change issues with these ministries. And in the past we were in a situation that Ministry of Environments were thought as a solely responsible agencies for fighting the climate change or biodiversity loss. But in recent years, and especially in recent two years, our Ministry of Economy and Ministry of Finance also are coming more to the topics. And during the COP17, I think our Ministry of Economy will play very important role with FAO. They are already started to think and organize an event for agrobiodiversity and so on. And overall, the Ministry of Economy and Agriculture, their role is very, very crucial and essential, and they should play a more important role in this.
Thank you very much for sharing these insights. I'm wondering whether, Eduardo, you want to come in as well with this different sectoral engagement as well, speaking also from your experience at the national scale?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have to acknowledge it's one of the main challenges that we have as an implementators on the field, working with other institutions who has other attributions, who has other responsibilities, and who has their own budgets in order to achieve their own visions and missions. So it's always a challenge in this regard, but particularly in the case of Mexico, I think we have been doing really well. In the case of CONAMP, last year we were accepted as one of the first projects in the new Global Biodiversity Framework Fund, the GBFF, with a project called MEX 30 by 30. And that project we developed it with the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Finance in Mexico, not only the Ministry of Environment. So it has a vision of financial sustainability with, of course, environmental sustainability. Also, we had a couple more projects. I don't want to take that longer time, but we have a couple more projects working with the Ministry of Agriculture regarding restoration, landscape restoration with also agricultural fields. We have another project with the ministry, with other institutions of the Ministry of Environment regarding water, regarding Conavio for the use of biodiversity in nature-based solutions to fight or to adapt climate change. So we have on the implementation field a lot of works in the case of Mexico. It has been a real challenge. At the end, talking the same language is one of the most important things. That's one of the lessons we have learned in our projects, to create the same language, to start on the same ground in order to actually make implementation happen, but talking, understanding the other priorities of these other sectors. So I'm not saying we're done or we're through with this, but it's a big challenge that I think we're facing quite well here in Mexico, or at least we're starting to do it quite well in Mexico.
Thank you very much. And I think that also relates to several points that were raised about, like, this is also sharing, I think, good practices and good experience in countries also to bring the sectoral ministers on board. So we'll just have two last questions. One to finish with also this more thematic and content-wise of the global review. There's a question in the chat related to actually how do we address specific biomes, and here there's the example of freshwater ecosystems. I'm wondering, Jean-Bruno, if you want to provide us some insights, given the current progress on the outline, how the different biomes will be addressed in the global review, and how can this also be used to shed light on some specific challenges for some biomes?
Yeah, thank you, Agnes. It is a good question and a crucial question. I think that at this stage, I'm not sure to give you the answer in terms of which biome we will consider, or in terms of freshwater or marine, coastal, forest, whatever. But I take note, and I will discuss with hashtag to see how to classify the biome and which biome we will take in terms of priority. And I think that we will consider all biome. But at this stage, I can't answer this question. It is a very good question.
Thank you very much, Jean-Bruno, and glad that this also can contribute to take this further in the well, sorry, I always want to say hashtag, but in the hashtag. Anyway, so we're getting to a close of our webinar. Thank you so much for sharing all of these views. I would like to just give the floor to our panelists to maybe say a couple of concluded words or remarks, what they take home as messages before freeing them up, and giving also the floor to Marcel to do final remarks. Mr. Maynmar, if you want to start and share like your takeaway message from today.
Yeah, our takeaway message should be that we should mobilize our efforts to finalize our NB subs And I saw in the questions that our mobilization for 2025 needs to be around the delivery of national reports, and I agree on that. And with this, I will wish everyone a successful end of the day, and thank you for inviting us for this very important webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Marian. And I think now you can also count on many of us here today and the webinar participants to engage constructively with the Armenian presidency. Thank you again very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone.
Gillian, you want to take your turn? I'm concerned you may have microphone issues, Gillian. Okay, now I think Gillian had an issue, sorry. Well, then I turn to you, Georgie.
Well, yes, thanks. Yeah, the matter of financing has been brought up. Presently, there's very little provision for direct financing of efforts by IPLCs, particularly with regards to monitoring, because we're trying to put in place quite a few projects, but also initiatives on community-based monitoring efforts. Obviously, that needs training, that needs the development of tools, the use of technologies, etc. And in order for us to be able to fully contribute to the global review, we really need direct financing for our efforts to do monitoring. So hopefully that will be taken on board by those who are very concerned about making a good global report, that technical and financial support is also needed for IPLCs. Thanks.
Thank you, Georgie. Jean-Bruno, I can turn to you for also your takeaway message.
Yeah, thank you, Agnès. It was really an opportunity. It was my pleasure to share idea with all of you. And I think that what it was good for me, the fact that your organization can play a good role, especially after the outcomes, after the global review on the ground. And I appreciate really your role. And you are welcome to participate in the global review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jean-Bruno. Eduardo?
Well, just to say, sorry, I turned off my camera for a moment, just to say that at the end, the engagement of all of the different institutions, sectors, decision makers is going to be key in order for the global review to actually have an impact during the next negotiations, SABSTA, and other meetings of a more technical point of view. So these type of efforts are going to be are going to be key to have common ground in order to make the negotiations as easy as possible. It's never going to be easy, but at the end, having all of this background work with the technical sides and all of these different sectors and people engaged is going to be key for achieving a really good commitments and a good follow-up of the Global Biodiversity Framework. So thank you very much for the invitation also. And it has been a pleasure to be participating here with all of you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo, for also sharing this thoughts and being with us, despite also the early times for you. So maybe now back to Gillian, I think you had some issues with your microphone, but if you want to just give some thoughts or take away from you.
Sure, thank you. I did get kicked out of this meeting a couple of times and now I'm on my phone, so hopefully this will work better. So I just want to say that it is a really important moment in time. We are having the midterm review of the framework, and this is the time to reflect and see what's going right and how do we accelerate progress and where are there gaps and what do parties do about it. And so that was the justification for why this was established. And so I think that it is something that hopefully everyone will continue to engage in.
Thank you very much, Gillian, for also these important and encouraging words. Turning to Juliette now.
Thank you really much. Just briefly to say thank you first, because I've seen a lot of people connected today. So it shows some interest in a process that could not be so sexy when you look at it, a report, a process, but really is super important. So we see some dynamic here, and it encouraged, I think, us to move forward. But I think just to mention that we do need more clarity over roles, responsibilities, and opportunities to move forward. Who should do what, when, to what effect, and for what, to how to make that happen. Basically, what kind of resources do we need, for instance? And finally, just to say that I think it's going in the right direction, because the recent transformative change assessment by IPBES really showed that we need more accountability to achieve our biodiversity targets, and that's what we're trying to do here. And we need also to address not only parties and communities, but also economic actors and the private sector. And I think that's good that the Deputy Minister of Armenia, Aram Marian, really emphasized the fact that the private sector is going to be part of dialogues. So just to underline that, thank you so much.
Thank you, Juliette. Thank you. And then I will just now hand over to Marcel, who has the high responsibility of concluding this webinar. For me, it's just a massive thank you for all the participants for their engagement, or panelists also for really brainstorming with us. And Marcel, we really look forward to listen what you get out of this, also based on the priority areas you mentioned.
Yeah, thanks, Agnes. And I will not try to summarize everything which has been said, but yeah, first of all, also from our end, a great thanks to everybody for participating in the webinar and all the useful insights that have been shared by the panelists. And in the discussion, I think it's also very encouraging. I counted at the highest number of about 138 people joining the webinar. So I think that shows the interest in this topic. So thanks to you all for this. And yeah, we as also was presented by Juliette in a presentation, we will engage in a further follow-up dialogue process to explore the global review and the further development of the global review further. In terms of sort of the political follow-up, I noted a few points which I think are really relevant for us to take into account, which is the point made about the operational guidance needed based on the global review next to COP decisions, so to make it really practical what comes out of the global review, and also make the connection between the global review and national review processes, so that sort of tracking of progress has its equivalence in national policymaking processes to be able to really create such a course correction as the review is intended for. I think there was quite a bit of discussion also on what can we do on review on the national level or on specific issues vis-a-vis that this is a global review. There's probably a middle ground for the global report in specifying between different groups of countries like SIDS or the different the blocks within the CBD negotiations, or on topics like agriculture and conservation, or on biomes, or on finance. In this way, also try to bring up messages that go beyond the CBD negotiators only in a way to address whole of government, as Joji was asking for, to see how can we really see what the whole of government and whole of society is delivering. And in a way, for example, I can imagine that then also informs the mainstreaming agenda within CBD in making this further concrete based on outcomes of the global review. And on the, I think another thing is maybe for us, at least for us in the research to consider. At the one hand, we see, of course, the specific process in the CBD, but if you do take one step back, and I think as researchers we can do that, we could see it as a longer term process and the need to develop a global review community, if you will, kind of a community of academics. There were the questions of how can academics contribute to this process. I would think that do a lot of analysis on collective progress on specific topics within that, and these types of publications would be one of the sources for the global report as well. But I also think the example that Joji gave on the third local biodiversity outlook as a complement to the global review report is actually a really good example of how a whole of society approach could be established or could be elaborated further as part of the global review. Yes, we have at the one hand the reporting through the ORT on national actions of non-state actors. But yeah, we have to see how far that is coming. And what we see, I think, with the report through the local biodiversity outlook is that indigenous people and local communities take the responsibility also to show in a global perspective of what their contributions are and engage in the debate. They could imagine that, for example, cities, business, financial institutions, all those actor groups within CBD, which have been taken part as a whole of society approach, take similar initiatives in developing joint reports on progress. And I think that might be a way to also get a richer understanding of progress in a whole of society approach. And I think I'll leave it with that. Once again, to everybody, thanks a lot. And you will hear from us in terms of the results of the session and next steps. And over to you, Agnes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Well, it's just time for me to say goodbye and thanking everyone again for staying with us for the duration of the webinar. So stay tuned. This work will be continuing. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day, night, afternoon, wherever you are on this planet. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Bye, Agnes.